So what I want to talk about is the how. Dan, you gave me a whole new vocabulary. I now know that what I've been doing for 30 years is creating Wii maps and dealing with the prefrontal cortex. Thank you. I'm slow here on the technical terms here, but I'm working in that domain. I'm trying to bring everyone into the game, all those prefrontal cortex. So what I want to do is I want to share with you at 3 levels. Level 1 is, from all of our research, 5 design principles that are kind of what Christopher Alexander, the architect, calls a pattern language. You can reconfigure them around any number of types of behavioral or social type changes that you want to bring about. Then I want to share with you our 20 years of research applying it specifically to the idea of environmental behavior change. How do you get people to adopt environmentally sustainable lifestyle practices? And then I want to take those two together, what I call social change 2.0, as applied to environmental behavior change, and share with you what we've been doing over the last 4 years to move that forward into the arena of climate change, specifically through what we call the low-carbon diet, that program that Rebecca spoke to, and our cool communities, and collectively what we call Cool America, which is to scale up behavioral change so that it has a significant impact on the carbon footprint of America. And we can measure it, and we can export it. So you all know we don't have a lot of time. If nothing else came out of the whole IPCC, we know that we have a small window of time to make a lot of change. So we really have to start thinking much more smartly about change than we have in the past. And we have 3 ways to deal with climate change: new technologies, renewable energy scaling up, and conservation. And the first 2 are not moving in the time frame that our planet is demanding, albeit it's critical over the long haul that we get that right. So what we have in the short term is conservation to buy us time, if we can scale it. So we need rapid transformation. But how do we do that? And by the way, I'm not proposing that I have the answer, but I have some answers, certainly from our research. And collectively, I hope out of our 3 days together, we'll get more answers and take this even further, whatever I have been able to learn. So as we think about social change, there are 3 primary ways that social change is traditionally done: passing a law, command and control, forcing someone to change; paying someone to change, or incentivizing them to change; or protest. Those are traditionally how we go about doing social change. But none of those are designed for rapid or fundamental transformation. In fact, one of the goals, which we are seeing playing out right now in Congress, is, and in all the legislations that are being passed, is to be incremental and have so many constituencies offering their points of view that you can only make small changes. So legislation at its best is incremental, not fundamental, and not transformative. If we needed any proof of that, we just have to pay attention to what's happening in Washington. So we've spent the last 30 years looking at how to build this kind of transformative social change, which I call social change 2.0. It has 5 principles. The first principle is what I call to empower, specifically to be able to get individuals to take personal responsibility to change the behaviors, to adopt new behaviors needed for society, needed for social change. We have to learn how to empower. We have to master the practice of empowerment. That has been the core learning for 30 years in our institute, the Empowerment Institute. How does one do that? Individually, organizationally, community-wide, society level. Second, we have to learn how to transform. We have to learn how to change the game, to move it to a whole new level. What systems theory calls second-order change, fundamentally moving it to a higher level of functioning. When a system is breaking down, it either breaks down or it has to break through. How do we create that second-order change? How do we change the game? There's a whole craft of transformation that we've been learning about, how to do that in individuals, organizations, communities, and around societal issues. The third is we had to Billy Parrish, who I was speaking to earlier, who says, you know, he's interested in social innovation and the whole social entrepreneurial strategy, which is where a lot of this is. We have to learn how to innovate. We have to invent the future. We can't look to the past necessarily, although there's certainly lots of things we can draw upon. How do we build the new social innovations? How do we tap into that extraordinary amount of creativity available to us in the human mind and the human spirit? We have to build those social innovations. The fourth thing, and this is where some of the WeMaps work that we've been doing shows up, is we have to learn how to bring everyone together. There's no one who's the bad guy. Business is not the problem and government's not the solution, and people sit on the sidelines hoping that business will, you know, government will get business regulated. I mean, that's the old paradigm. We're all in this together, and we have to learn how to collaborate at a community level, at a neighborhood level, at a national level, at a global level. There's no other anymore. And the last piece is what we call disseminate, designing replicable solutions that can hit tipping points. And that has been one of the areas that I've been most interested in studying, how to find disproportionate influence and leverage it. If you can't pass a law to get people to change, if in fact the rational actor model, which John speaks to, is really a myth, and in fact people don't act that way, and you can't pass a law or pay them to change, then what you've got is you have to motivate them to change. You have to inspire them, empower them to change. But that's harder to do because you can't force everyone to do it. So you have to actually have an ability to disseminate an innovation through leveraging disproportionate influence or tipping points, as Malcolm Gladwell talks about. One of the most important people I've come across in my work is a man named Everett Rogers. Any of you know Everett Rogers? So Everett Rogers is one of my heroes. He was a researcher, a social science researcher out of Stanford, and he had as his aspiration to find out how new innovations spread through a culture, whether they be new seed strains for farmers, new medicines for doctors, or low-carbon lifestyles, whatever they might be, or low-carbon communities, or climate change. And what he found, and some of you may know this from your research, but I want to tell you how we've applied it, is that there are 4 groups of people that respond to an innovation. It's very important with all the climate denier activity going on right now to understand the diffusion of innovation in relationship to moving ideas into the culture. He said the first group are called early adopters. They seek out the new and they have a high tolerance for experimentation. You are early adopters for climate change innovation, because right now we're looking at a whole new way to think about climate change and addressing it. Oh, sorry. Thank you, John. Thank you so much. And I was hearing it also. The next group, which is 15% of a population. And he said, what's really interesting about the early adopters is that if you can get to 15% of a population, you hit a tipping point where it can start diffusing on its own momentum. So 15% of the people living on a block, or 15% of the universities that might take on an issue, or 15% of the communities within a state or country. But then it starts moving on its own momentum if the social innovation is capable of diffusing, and not all are, some plateau.